She told me, "From now on, I decide when we see each other. Stop pressuring me." I just nodded. Weeks later, she was standing at my door, shaking, with tears in her eyes, and holding a pregnancy test. But we hadn't been together for over a month. My name is Alex. I am 31. I work in logistics planning for a regional distributor and live in a mid-sized city where my weeks are predictable and my weekends are quiet. I go to work early, lift at the same gym after, and usually cook at home unless it is Friday. My girlfriend was Jenna. She is 29. We were together a little over a year and not living together, but spending most nights at each other's places. No shared lease. No shared accounts. Just overlap. Enough that it felt serious. Things started shifting about 2 months before everything blew up. Jenna became sharp in small ways. Short replies. Eye rolls when I asked normal questions. She started talking about needing space in a way that felt less like balance and more like control. One night after I asked if she wanted to come over Sunday like we usually did, she snapped. She said she was tired of me expecting access to her time. She said from now on she would decide when we saw each other and that I needed to stop pressuring her. Her tone was flat, but hostile, like I was being put in my place. I did not argue. I did not chase. I told her okay and meant it. I figured if someone needs distance, the cleanest response is to give it fully. I stopped texting first. I stopped suggesting plans. I focused on work, the gym, and my routine. A week passed. Then another. No invites. No check-ins. Just the occasional cold reply if I answered something she sent. I assumed this was either a slow fade or a test. Either way, I was not playing along. By the 3rd week, I had already accepted that the relationship was probably over. I had not seen her in more than a month. That mattered later more than I realized. Around day 25 of not seeing each other, Jenna suddenly started liking my Instagram stories again. Not messaging. Just little taps, like she was reminding me she still existed. It felt calculated. Like she wanted the option of me without the inconvenience of me. I ignored it. The next time she actually texted, it was a Tuesday night at 11:40. Just a single line asking if I was mad at her. No apology. No explanation. Just fishing. I said no, I am not mad. I am just giving you the space you asked for. She replied with a thumbs up, then immediately followed it with something snippy about how I was being dramatic and passive-aggressive. That annoyed me because it was the exact opposite of what I was doing. I was being literal. I did not argue. I just said okay. Good night. After that, she went silent again for another week. At that point, I started telling myself to treat this like it was over already. Not in a bitter way. More like a practical way. I stopped keeping my schedule open on weekends. I made plans with friends. I even deleted the draft text I kept writing and not sending. Then, on a Friday afternoon, she called me while I was at work. Not texted. Called. I stepped into a stairwell to answer. Her voice was sharp from the start. She said she had been thinking and that she did not like how I had not fought for her. She said a real boyfriend would have pushed back and proved he cared. She said I just rolled over and disappeared like I never valued her. I told her I respected what she asked for. If she wanted a boyfriend who ignores her boundaries, that is not me. She made it sound like a laugh, but meaner. She said boundaries are not an excuse to stop trying. Then she said something that stuck with me. She said you will regret acting like you do not need me. That was such a weird thing to say in a normal relationship conversation. It sounded like a threat dressed up as confidence. I told her I was not interested in games. If she wanted to see me, she could ask like an adult. If she did not, that was fine too. She hung up on me. That weekend I stayed busy and honestly felt lighter. Until the next Thursday night, when my doorbell rang at 9:13 p.m. and I opened the door to Jenna standing there like a ghost. Hair messy, hoodie pulled tight, mascara streaks. She was shaking so hard I thought something terrible had happened. She held up a small white stick in her hand like evidence. Then she looked past me into my apartment and said we need to talk right now. I did not let her in right away. Not out of spite. Just instinct. It had been over a month since I had seen her in person, and now she was on my doorstep unannounced, acting like there was an emergency. I asked her what was going on. She pushed past me without waiting for an answer and walked into my living room like she still lived there. She sat down hard on the couch, put the test on the coffee table, and buried her face in her hands. She said she was pregnant. I did not react. I just stood there trying to line up the math in my head. I am not bad at timelines. That is literally my job. And the numbers did not work. I asked how far along she thought she was. She said about 6 weeks. Maybe 7. She was vague in a way that felt rehearsed but not thought through. I reminded her calmly that we had not slept together in over a month. Longer than that, actually. She waved her hand like I was being annoying and said bodies are weird and tests are not exact. That is when her tone shifted. The crying stopped almost instantly. She looked up at me and snapped that this was not the time to be cold or analytical. She said I needed to step up and stop acting like an asshole. That flipped a switch in me. Not anger. Clarity. I told her I was not calling her a liar, but the timeline did not include me. I said if she wanted support, we could talk about next steps. But I was not automatically accepting responsibility for something that did not make sense. She stood up fast and got in my face. She said, of course you would do this. She said you disappear for weeks and then act shocked when real life happens. She accused me of abandoning her emotionally and said stress can delay cycles. I asked one question. Just one. I asked if there was anyone else. Her face changed. Not guilt exactly. More irritation. She said that question alone proved I was not ready to be a father. Then she grabbed her bag and stormed toward the door. Before leaving, she turned back and said, "You will regret this." Everyone always does. The door slammed. I locked it behind her and sat down staring at the pregnancy test still on my table, wondering why she brought it to my house at all. That is when my phone buzzed with a text from a number I did not recognize. It said, "Hey man, we need to talk about Jenna." I stared at the text for a full minute before replying. I asked who this was. He said his name was Ryan. He said he felt weird reaching out, but thought I deserved to know what was going on. He said he and Jenna had been seeing each other on and off for about 2 months. That lined up perfectly. He said she told him we were basically broken up, but that I was still hanging around and could not let go. That already annoyed me because it matched the story she had been trying to paint. I asked why he was texting me now. He said because earlier that night Jenna showed up at his place crying and told him she was pregnant. Then she told him she was going to come to my place because I was the safe option and would take care of her. His exact words were that she said I would do the right thing once I calmed down. That made my stomach drop. Not because of the pregnancy, but because of how transactional she sounded. Ryan said he asked her whose it was, and she dodged the question. He said the timing pointed to him, but she kept saying tests are weird and doctors will figure it out later. He said he got uncomfortable and asked for space, which apparently made her spiral. I told him she had just been at my apartment with the test. He said, yeah, I figured. Then he sent screenshots. Not explicit ones. Just messages. Jenna talking about managing situations. About how I was predictable. About how she needed to keep things calm until she decided what she wanted to do. Reading that was surreal. It was like watching someone narrate their own manipulation without shame. Ryan apologized for reaching out like this. He said he did not want drama. He just did not want to be used as a backup plan or watch me get blindsided. I thanked him. Genuinely. After we stopped texting, I sat there thinking about how quickly she had switched from needing space to showing up pregnant and angry that I did not immediately fall in line. I realized the pregnancy test was still on my coffee table. I picked it up and looked at it like it was a prop. Something meant to force a reaction, not start a conversation. I put it back in the box, put the box in a bag, and decided I was done engaging emotionally at all. The next morning, I woke up to 12 missed calls and a long voicemail from Jenna accusing me of humiliating her by talking to Ryan. That is when I knew this was about control, not confusion. And I finally understood why she needed to decide when we saw each other. I did not call her back. Instead, I listened to the voicemail once and deleted it. The tone was familiar now. Accusatory. Injured. Angry that the narrative was not going her way. She kept repeating that I had gone behind her back by talking to Ryan like I had broken some rule she invented. An hour later, she texted asking why I was ignoring her when she was dealing with something serious. I replied once. I said I was aware of the situation and I needed space. Her word. Space. That did not land well. She sent paragraph after paragraph flipping between guilt and aggression. She said I owed her support. She said I was being cruel. She said I was punishing her for asking for independence earlier like this was some long revenge plan. I stopped responding. That afternoon, Ryan texted again. He said she had gone back to his place and was now accusing him of abandoning her too. He said she was insisting one of us needed to step up immediately and that she was tired of being questioned. That phrase stuck with me. Tired of being questioned. It explained everything. I told Ryan I was stepping away completely and suggested he do the same. He agreed. He said something felt off and he did not want to be dragged into chaos. That night, Jenna showed up at my door again. This time angry, not shaky. I did not open it. I spoke through the door and told her to leave. She yelled that I was heartless, that I was running away from responsibility, that real men do not hide. I told her calmly that if she did not leave, I would call the building manager. That was enough. She left after kicking the door once. The next day, she posted vague things online about betrayal and men who disappear when things get real. Friends of hers unfollowed me. A few muted me. I did not care. What bothered me was how quickly she had turned the situation into a performance. 3 days later, I got a message from an unknown number again. Different than Ryan. It said, "This is awkward, but I think Jenna might be lying to you, and you should probably know." That is when I realized there were more people involved than she had let on. And the story she was telling depended entirely on who was listening. The second message came from a woman named Claire. She said she got my number from Ryan and debated reaching out, but felt wrong staying quiet. She said she had been casually seeing Jenna too. Not seriously, just hanging out. Drinks. Staying over a few times. That explained the gaps. Claire said Jenna told her I was controlling and emotionally distant. That she was trying to leave me, but I would not let go. Claire said she only realized something was off when Jenna showed up at her place crying about being pregnant and immediately started talking about which guy would be more stable. That word again. Stable. Claire said she asked straight up if Jenna knew who the father was, and Jenna snapped at her. Said it did not matter. Said whoever stepped up would be the one. Reading that message made everything settle into place. This was not panic. This was strategy that had gone sloppy. I thanked Claire and told her I was stepping out entirely. She said she was doing the same. She said she wanted no part of whatever this was turning into. After that, I blocked Jenna everywhere. Phone, socials, email, everything. Not to punish her, just to remove access. I did not owe explanations anymore. 2 days later, she found a way around it by emailing my work account. She said I was ruining her life by abandoning her. She said she had already told her family it was mine. She said if I did not come talk like an adult, she would have no choice but to handle things publicly. That is when I replied one last time. I told her any further contact should be through a lawyer. I told her the timeline excluded me and I would not be manipulated into silence. I told her to stop contacting me. She did not respond after that. A week later, Ryan texted to say she was suddenly no longer pregnant. No explanation. No follow-up. Just another vague crisis resolved. Friends stopped asking questions. The story shifted again. What stayed with me was not the pregnancy scare. It was how easily she decided when people were useful. She told me she would decide when we saw each other. She was right, just not in the way she thought. For a while, things were quiet. Too quiet in a way that made me suspicious rather than relieved. Anyone who has dealt with someone like Jenna knows silence usually means regrouping. About 2 weeks after everything went dark, a mutual friend texted me asking if I was okay. That alone told me my name was back in circulation. I asked what she meant. She said Jenna had been telling people I abandoned her during a pregnancy scare and then threatened her with lawyers to keep her quiet. I corrected her once. Briefly. I said the timeline did not include me and there were multiple people involved. I did not argue. I did not defend myself emotionally. I just stated facts. The friend went quiet for a bit and then said, "Yeah, that is not what she has been telling it." That was the pattern. Jenna would say just enough to make herself the victim, but never enough to be pinned down. A few days later, I ran into her completely by accident at a grocery store near my place. I saw her before she saw me and almost turned around but decided not to. I was not afraid of her. I just did not want a scene. She spotted me anyway. Her face hardened immediately, and she walked straight toward me like she had been waiting for this moment. She said, "Wow, so this is how you act." Like nothing happened. I told her calmly that I was buying groceries. That was it. She accused me of spreading lies about her. I told her I had not contacted anyone except the people who contacted me first. She rolled her eyes and said, "Everyone knows what kind of man you are now." I asked her one last question. I asked if she was ever actually pregnant. She froze. Just for half a second. Then she snapped that it was none of my business anymore. That was answer enough. She walked away muttering something about karma. Standing there in the produce aisle, I felt strangely calm. No anger. No sadness. Just confirmation. The story kept changing because the truth never mattered. I went home and blocked a few more people who were clearly fishing for drama. I tightened my circle. I stopped explaining. A month later, I heard she had moved in with someone new already. Someone stable. That word again. The irony is she wanted control so badly she burned every bridge that actually gave it to her. And the space she demanded ended up being permanent. About 6 weeks after the grocery store run-in, I got an email from an unfamiliar address with a very formal subject line. It was from a law office. For half a second, my stomach tightened, not because I was scared, but because I was annoyed she was still trying to force contact. The email itself was vague. It said they were representing Jenna and wanted to discuss a sensitive personal matter. No details, no accusations, just a request for availability. I forwarded it to a lawyer friend of mine who does family law and asked him to sanity check it. He called me 10 minutes later and laughed. Not a mean laugh. A tired one. He said this was a fishing expedition. No case. No filing. Just pressure. He suggested a short response. Direct. Non-emotional. So that is what I sent. I said all communication should be in writing and that based on prior information, I did not believe there was any legal issue to discuss. I never heard back. A few days later, Ryan texted me again. He said Jenna had told people she lost the baby due to stress and that the stress was caused by me cutting her off. He asked if I was okay with that story floating around. I told him I was done correcting narratives. Anyone who mattered already knew the truth or would figure it out on their own. What surprised me was how fast people started backing away from her once the details stopped lining up. Stories changed. Dates shifted. Sympathy wore thin. You can only cry wolf so many times before people stop showing up. The last thing I heard was that she was telling her new boyfriend that I was obsessed with her and still trying to contact her. The irony almost made me laugh considering I had done the opposite for months. At that point, I realized something important. She did not actually want me back. She wanted me available. As a role. As a fallback. As stability she could activate when needed. Once I stopped being usable, I became the villain. That was fine with me. I had my routine back. My peace back. And for the first time in a long while, no one was deciding when I was allowed access to my own life. A few months passed without incident, which was how I knew it was actually over. No late-night messages. No mutuals checking in. No new versions of the story reaching me. Life settled back into something boring and stable in the best way. Then one evening I got a notification from LinkedIn of all places. Jenna had viewed my profile. That was it. No message. Just the digital equivalent of standing across the street pretending not to look. I did nothing. Did not block. Did not react. I closed the app and went back to making dinner. A week later, I ran into Ryan again by coincidence at a bar downtown. We nodded. Talked briefly. He told me she was no longer with the guy she moved in with. Apparently things got intense fast, and then collapsed just as quickly. He said she told him men always disappoint her when she needs them most. I told him I hoped she figured out what she was actually looking for. What I did not say was that she already had. Control. Certainty. A script where other people existed to fill roles on demand. When they stopped playing along, they became problems. Looking back, the pregnancy test was never the point. It was a lever. Something dramatic enough to force me back into position after I stopped responding to pressure. When it did not work, it disappeared like it had never existed. The most unsettling part was how calm she was when she thought I would comply and how angry she got when I did not. That contrast taught me more than any argument could have. She told me she would decide when we saw each other. What she did not expect was that I would decide when we stopped entirely. And once I did, there was nothing left for her to negotiate. It has been long enough now that I can see the whole thing clearly without replaying it in my head. There was no single moment where it fell apart. It unraveled the second she decided control mattered more than connection. When she told me she would decide when we saw each other, she was not asking for balance. She was setting terms. I just happened to accept them more literally than she expected. I did not fight. I did not chase. I did not argue my worth. I stepped back and let her have exactly what she asked for. Distance. Silence. Autonomy. And in that space, everything she was trying to manage collapsed on its own. The pregnancy test was never about a child. It was about forcing urgency, about reasserting leverage. When that failed, it vanished like it had never existed. That alone tells me everything I need to know. People like her rely on emotional pressure and confusion. They need reactions to steer. Once you stop reacting, there is nothing left to grab onto. I do not hate her. I am not angry. I am just done. I learned that boundaries only work if you are willing to enforce them quietly and permanently. If there is a lesson here, it is simple. When someone demands control over access to you, believe them. Then decide whether you want to live on those terms. I did not. And that decision ended the story for good.